Welcome to Epithets, exploring the sacred titles of Hecate.
We are so glad you're all here joining us again for our episode on Ameibousa. And to talk about the meaning of Ameibousa, my co-host, if you didn't know who I am, my name is Isaac Bars. I'm one of your co-hosts. And my co-host, Robin Silverman, is about to talk to you all about a little bit of Greek, just Greek, ancient Greek.
Little bit of a Greek grammar lesson on this one, because
Yeah.
this is another one of those where I think the grammar matters. So our epithet today is Ameibousa, and Ameibousa is an epithet that we have from a really specific object from antiquity, which we're going to talk about. But before we talk about it, I want to talk about this word, Ameibousa, which is from the Greek verb ameibo, which means change. It can mean change, it can mean transformation, it can also mean exchanging, something like, in English we might say where, you make change, like you make change for $1, right? That kind of exchange can also mean. Ameibo also, interestingly enough, is where we get the word amoeba from, the animal that's always changing. But this form ameibousa, the ending on there, usa, is the feminine singular form of the present active participle in Greek. And if you don't know what that means, that's fine. I wouldn't have had any clue before I studied Greek. But Greek uses participles in amazing ways that the English language has just never even thought of. And a participle, for anyone who's not a grammar nerd, is it's a part of speech. It's a way of turning a verb into an adjective, right? We do this in English by adding ing to the end of the verb. So you might refer to, a man or the running man, right? The man runs, he is the running man. So you're taking that verb and you're turning it into an adjective. So ameibousa is the participle form of ameibo. So it's the changing. But since it's the present active feminine singular, that usa ending is doing a lot of work. And what it's saying is she who is currently in the process of changing, which I think is a pretty interesting way of putting it, that it's the present active. So it's an ongoing activity. It's not, something that happened in the past, something that happened in the future. It's something that is happening. It's in process of happening. She who is currently in the process of changing, right? And so it's this process that's going on. It's not just, the one who makes change or the changing one or, any of those things. It's the one who is currently in the process of changing. So I feel like that's important for understanding this epithet and for reading into this epithet to understand the work that this present active participle is doing here. So after that quick tour through grammar, I want to talk about the object, which I think we'll be talking about today a lot. And this object is what's known as the Pergamon table. Isaac, if you want to jump in here, feel free, because I can just go on talking all day about this.
I love it. Well,
yeah.
I think I wanted to kind of, first of all, talk about why we're talking about the Pergamon tablet when we're talking about Ameibousa. As far as I know, this is kind of where we see that epithet being used. We don't really see it that much outside of it. And so that's kind of the where it's from. It is a tablet found in a cache of stuff in Pergamon, which is in Turkey, in 1899, and it was being written about by the guy that was heading it, this German named A. Kons, and he had found 10 pieces. Actually, he wrote 9 pieces, but I guess he kind of put 2 of the rings together. And he was talking about how all these different names on this tablet that he had found, different divine names. It had these 3 figures written, drawn into it. Each were holding very Hecatean things, a key, torches, whips, serpents, and swords. So they're all rather imposing, cool figures. And it was surrounded by all of these different Greek vowels and these magical words and these different goddess names. And I'll let you talk a little more about it, Robin?
So what we're talking about is it's a triangular bronze tablet. And I would recommend, if you're interested, looking up an image of it online, because I can only describe it so well. But it's a triangular bronze tablet with 3 different goddess figures, and then a circle in the middle, and a whole lot of writing on it. And it was found with a really interesting collection of objects. This probably dates from around the 3rd century CE. And as Isaac said, in Pergamon, which is in northwest Turkey. At the time, it would have been Greek. So it was found with, the list I found of the objects found with it is a 4-sided bronze nail, 2 bronze rings with magical characters engraved, 2 rectangular bronze lamellae inscribed with characters. A lamellae is just sort of a bronze tablet. 3 smooth black river stones with identical inscriptions. I don't know what the inscription there was, but that seems really interesting to me. A bronze convex disc, also carrying with Greek vowels, and then this table. And this table has, it's like it almost looks like a base. There's a sort of a post projecting from the middle and sort of a circle in the middle. And in each of the corners, there's a goddess, as I said. And above each goddess is a name. And the 3 goddess names are Dione, Phoebe, and Nike. And below each one is this word, Ameibousa. And from what the goddesses are, the way they're dressed and what they're carrying, they've got keys, they've got torches, they've got a whip, they've got serpents. It's Hecate, right? These are aspects of Hecate. And there's magical characters, and there's vowels, and there's all kinds of strange things all over the remaining space. And so we have this thing, and it's really interesting, and it's really obscure, right? It's mysterious. We don't really know who what all these words refer to. We've got these 3 goddesses that don't seem to be the goddesses depicted. They're just names of goddesses, because the goddess that's depicted looks like Hecate. There's also inscriptions to an inscription, O Persephone, O Melanoe, O Leucophrene, which is also really interesting. We've talked before about Persephone's relationship with Hecate, and Melanoe we've talked about a little bit. She's a little more of an obscure figure, but she's also identified with Hecate. And then Leucophrene is probably an epithet of Artemis, who also gets associated with Hecate. So
because Leucophrene means white toad.
It does
which
mean
is
white toad.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know, isn't that cool? Leucophrene literally means white toad. But yeah, I think it's an epithet of Artemis, based actually on a place name.
There's also a character in a mythical story named Leucophrene who helped. Oh gosh, I'm trying to look at my chicken scratch my notes. Leucopus, whose name meant white horse, who was invading her hometown, and she fell in love with him and helped him take over her town. But anyway, unlikely that they're putting her on a sacred triangle.
And considering the associations, that's Artemis is most likely, though. That is a cool story.
It makes sense.
It does, yeah. So of course, the immediate question everybody wants to know is, what is this thing? What's it for? And a lot of sort of the 20th century researchers who've had anything to say about it describe it as a divination device or divination kit. And there's reason to say that. The 3 goddesses in particular could each be associated with a different oracle. Dione can be associated with the Oracle of Zeus at Dodona. Phoebe is Phoebus Apollo, of course, in the Oracle at Delphi. Nobody really knows what Nike is. Maybe related to Nyx, the knight, which also in some Orphic literature has some oracular associations. So, you could see that, though nobody can really describe how it might have been used for divination. So I can understand why people say that, but I personally don't buy it. I don't think that's what this thing is. There's a really interesting article by Cassandra Miller. who looked into this, and she argued.
Cassandra Jackson.
That's right. I think her, like, she got married and like her name changed to Miller or it changed to Jackson. I can't remember which way it went. But
Oh,
in some
okay.
places she's Cassandra Miller, some places she's Cassandra Jackson.
Oh, confusing.
Yeah. But she wrote this really interesting article where she argues that this is actually a theurgical device. She argued that it's actually a device for animating statues. And I think that's a really interesting, much more interesting than the divination theory. And one I would be more inclined to go along with, though I'm still not quite sure I'm buying it. But I want to talk a little bit about theurgy and what it means for something to be a theurgical device. Theurgy is a practice of it's I think the theurgists themselves might not like calling it magic, but it's a magical practice for connecting with the deity. The example I can use that I think most of my listeners will be at least on some level familiar with of a theurgical ritual would be the Christian ritual of communion, where you have the celebrant who has these symbols of the god, right? These the wine, the bread are symbolic of this moment in the story of the god. And they are, through a particular set of ritual actions, blessed by the divine to be transformed, right, into, to be transmuted into an actual representation of divinity on earth that the practitioner can then interact with, right? And that's kind of the basic idea of what a theurgical ritual is this kind, they would use different symbolic representations of the god, and they would do certain ritual actions, many of which we don't have been lost to us and we don't know, but they would do certain ritual actions in order to connect with the god through the use of these different object symbols. And one of the things they would do, they were known for doing, and that Cassandra Jackson talks about, is animating a statue. You would bring life into the statue. You'd have a statue, and you would do a ritual with the statue to imbue it with the energy of the god, because the theurgists also thought that you can't directly encounter a god. You can't directly communicate with a god. It's too much. It's too big. If you want to truly connect with a god, you have to do it through the medium of this sort of symbolic language, which I think is something we definitely still subscribe to this very day. I think a lot of magical practice is exactly that, is communicating with the god through this symbolic language of magic. So in any case, Pergamon at the time had a school of theurgy there. The theurgist, I think it was Sosipatros, was located in Pergamon. So the idea that there would be somebody doing this sort of theurgical work there at the time is not at all unlikely. So this idea that and I think that goes back to where we're talking about Ameibousa, right? This active participle, she who is doing the changing. I think it's easy to read that one way as the idea that Hecate herself is changing. In some of the literature I've read about this tablet, they talk about it as the moon, right? The moon is always changing. And so Ameibousa is a reference to the moon, which could be. But the idea that she is changing the symbolic object, she's doing the transmutation, or even she's changing the practitioner. Because of course that's the ultimate goal, right? Is self-transformation, is to transform yourself into something closer to the divine. So that's where I think this idea of this present active participle, she who is changing, by using this tablet and charging up your object on it, you are you are allowing her to do the changing. You're allowing her to make change. So this idea of statue animation, I think, maybe. It's a cool idea. I know I personally, as a magical practitioner, I look at this thing and to me it looks like a table of practice. It
Mm.
looks like, and a table of practice, there are different versions out of the most famous one is the Trithemius version of a table of practice, which has the names of the angels around the edge in a triangle. But if you look up the design for a table of practice, use Trithemius one or any other versions that people use, it's the same kind of triangular structure with the magical words on it. And the function of a table of practice is to draw a spirit into manifestation, to draw it into usually using some kind of object or symbol. You call upon the spirit and it manifests into the table of practice. And that's what I think this thing looks like. And that's what I think the Ameibousa here refers to. Now, I want to be real clear. This is as much my opinion as the guys who said it was a divination kit. This is all speculation, but looking at it through the eyes of a practitioner, to me, this looks like something similar in function to a table of practice.
As you're talking about that, I'm now, you know me, my brain is going over here thinking about how can I use this design in a
Yeah.
practical, modern way. And as you know, over in Littleton, I host a Hecatean rite every new moon for the community, and we do a I don't want to say communion, but we do bless a thing of pomegranate juice and bless it in the name of Hecate. And I'm giving everybody the cliff notes, and then we drink it. It might be really interesting to try to work the the Pergamon tablet into that as a way
Yeah.
of like focusing the spiritual energy right onto the what is the offering, but also to transform the juice into something for us to
Yeah.
make it what we need it to be, calling on
That's
Ameibousa's name, she who changes, to bring that change to us. Uh, but I think I'm skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, no, but I think that's a great idea. And that's actually something I kind of feel like I want to do to kind of test my hypothesis. I mean, it
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily prove that that's what the maker of it used it for, but to, draw one out or even just do a printout of the thing and use it in a ritual like that and see, how it functions in that way. If it functions in that
Well,
way.
really, right.
Sounds
In
like
the end,
a really fun experiment.
that's kind of it. I think magic, there's a lot of, kind of, you know, Sappho here messing around and finding out. Uh, and it's like trying to see how we can use the magical technology of the old world and see if it has any use to us in modern day and in practice. And this might be a really great way both to work with the epithet, but also to work with the picture, to work with this design, this ancient design, which I will post on our socials so people can see it. I promise I will actually do this one. I have easy access to it, so I will share it. But anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off talking
No,
about that.
no,
It's
no,
just
no.
so
I
it's
think
so
that's
fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, no, this is a fascinating object and it's so it's so rare to find this sophisticated a piece of magical equipment. That
Hmm.
it's not just a sophisticated piece of magical equipment, but it's obviously something that was used, right? Somebody
Hmm.
used this for their own ceremonies, their own purposes, whatever they used it for. And I love that. I think that's so cool that we have this thing that this magician from 2000 years ago, would have used for their own rituals.
Well, in that article, did you notice that it was mentioned that it kind of showed another triangle that was very similar?
Yeah,
The author was
there have
talking
been
about,
there have been others
yeah,
found similar. I think this is like the best one we have, but there have
right.
been similar versions of this found. So it's not like this thing is unique either. So
Hmm.
there are there are other examples. I think it was three others that they're
Hmm.
fragmentary though, or we just have pieces of them, or um
One
yeah.
of one of them was from Apamea in Syria, and it was a little more rudimentary. It definitely was and it was not, they didn't find it in as good of a condition. So there were pieces missing and stuff like that. But it definitely had the three goddess theme going on, and it had Ameibousa on it. And
Yeah.
there's some other stuff, but it looked a little more, as I said, rudimentary. So not only is this is a design that other people were working with uh in some magical way, whether
Yeah.
it was sorceress or to connect to a deity, or to enliven something, or enliven a statue, or just change something, just to do some
Yeah.
sort of magic.
Yeah.
Uh, it wasn't a a one-off bit of magical tech, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. I think that the fact that there are multiple examples of this tells me that there was somebody out there teaching people how to make this or teaching people how to use
Hmm.
this. Um, so it wasn't just like one guy coming up with this really neat idea to make this triangle. It was somebody was putting this out there saying, hey, this is the kind of triangle you need to make. Maybe, maybe things got passed around in books, things were taught about. We don't have any of that literature anymore, which I think is really sad. But
Hmm.
the fact that there's multiple examples of these in different places too tells me that there's somebody showing people how to do this, somebody teaching people how to do this. Um, and it implies, I guess, what we might think of as like a magical tradition, but what these days we would call a magical tradition, this idea of, oh yeah, I do that practice where you have the triangle with the Ameibousa on it, that there's this specific magical practice that people share. Because it's so specific and it's so sophisticated that it really suggests that there's and of course, we have these Neoplatonic theurgical writers like Iamblichus and Proclus who are writing these very sophisticated sort of Neoplatonic theurgical philosophy and literature and practices, and we've lost so much of what they had, what they wrote, that this feels like a relic of somebody like that who was writing about it, in order for people in different places to be constructing the same device.
Right. It's very cool. Now, are there any other ways you think one could work magically with this epithet outside of the tablet? I could think of maybe a few different ways.
Hmm.
Uh, I guess I'll take the reins there.
Yeah.
Just asking for change in general. You could work this in with a few other epithets, trying to bring transformation into your life, and or transforming a situation, perhaps. Being very vague because, trying to keep it open-ended,
Mhm.
with like candle magic or something like that. Uh, but also, I'm just kind of caught up in the idea of playing around with the tablet,
Yeah.
or something similar. We were talking a little bit before the episode. Uh, my husband had long ago bought this divination triangle for Hecate, that's made by, or was made by Practical Sorcery, and it clearly inspired by the Pergamon tablet. It's not exactly the same, but trying to use, trying to see if, like what one finds more powerful, like different people's ideas or different people's designs, seeing if a change, how much it was changed really affects its magical potency, or, there's a lot of magical experimentation there.
Yeah. And I think it would be really awesome to have an actual replica of it in bronze, but it is probably outside of most people's resources. It's certainly outside of mine. But I think
That's a
I think
lot of bronze.
but I think that, you could draw it on a piece of paper or even print out, the image of it that we have and work with
100%.
that. Yeah. And
Hmm.
then Yeah, that would still, I think, be a way of working with it without having to have this whole thing cast in bronze.
Yeah, that's a little more. A printout is a little more accessible than a full bronze triangular creation. But
Yes. Now
great.
you got me wondering if
Yeah,
there's somebody on Etsy or something who's made one. That would be cool.
I bet there is, but
There's got to be.
that's a
That's
whole
a whole other
Google.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole Google hole right there.
Yep.
Um, Great. Yeah. Uh, I think we pretty much just covered it all, didn't we?
Yeah. I think one more thing I want to say about, the
Oh, yeah. Okay.
about the way you were talking about, the uses of this idea of Amebusa, of, the one who is currently in the process of changing,
Hmm.
is this idea of personal transformation, self-transformation.
You're right.
If there's things about yourself that you would like to see transmuted or changed.
Hmm.
Like this is if you're working on yourself in that way, I think, this particular epithet vacate would be appropriate for that kind of work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool.
Because that is definitely something the theurgists were all about. They were focused on, transforming themselves into something closer to the gods.
Very cool. Well, so this will be we're about to take a little bit of break from recording. This spring is looking pretty busy, both for Robin and I, and so we're gonna make a little space for that. So we're gonna take a few months break and pick up again a little down the road this year. So you're not going to hear from us, at least on the podcast, for maybe 2 or 3 months, but we'll pick back up, and by then we'll have an epithet that we're going to tackle at that time. If you
Mhm.
have a suggestion for an epithet, or there's one that you really want to hear about, hit us up. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at the Epithet Podcast. And well, that's what we got for Ameibousa. Until next time, thank you for listening, and we'll be in touch.